Tonight is December the 6th, 2016. I have an interesting little device tonight that I think some of you might like. This is an AP, let's see, here's what it is right here. No, it's a TS-56A AP radar slotted line antenna tuner. This is the only thing I really found out there about it, where this good gentleman documented what he knew about it. If you look at it and read all this stuff, not too much to read. He gives some really good description of it and how to get into it and put a D cell in it right there. There's one D cell. This thing was made and has spare parts right here from May 1944. So it was actually made and used during the World War II. He says he believes it was used on some 58 centimeter radar equipment to tune an antenna. That very well may be. But according to its length nowadays, this thing is just a lot of fun to play with at Wi-Fi frequencies. It does a marvelous job at 2.4 gigahertz. This is a little tube in there. It's a little acorn type tube. It's going to be hard for me to get it out with one hand here. But this is a spare. Let's see here. It has a 1.5 volt filament. It takes 50 milliamps to light it up. There's the little tube that goes in it. Like I say, this is a spare. Let me put this over here so we won't drop it. Well, what we're going to do is mix some nice modern day technology with this guy right here, and I'll show you what I've done with it so far. I don't know exactly how to use it to tune an antenna. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I'm going to excite this thing and use this slotted line to determine the wavelength of 2.5 gigahertz. So this is a Wi-Fi device that the Wi-Fi antenna builders of today might want. Let me show you what I got here. I'm going to be driving it with this little guy right here, this signal generator. I'm going to run it 2500 megahertz, that's 2.5 gigahertz. And that drives this little 2-watt amplifier right here. We're running it through a bird line here and an element. This element, it's a 2.4 to 2.5 gigahertz 5-watt element. I've got it into this little digital readout, so we don't have any parallax error. We can just read it straight out, and all of it, the RF comes in, goes through all of this, and it's actually going out to an antenna. I made these antennas some time ago as a reference antenna when I was testing some Wi-Fi stuff that I've had a lot of views on, so maybe the Wi-Fi people will like this. It's got a 50 microamp meter movement in it. Sorry for the glare. But let me show you what it does. When I turn the power on, I'll power up the amplifier, turn the RF on. There we go. I'll have to put the camera on and turn this guy on. There, I'm getting 2.24 watts forward, and if I turn this guy the other way, of course I'm measuring reflected power, and I get none. I can adjust the reflected power by adjusting this little monopole right here. You'll see, watch when I put my hand over close to it so you can see the reflected power. So it's, when I do that, just put my hand close to it, you get reflected power, and I'm just cupping it over it. You even see the meter doing what it does. But anyway, here's what this thing just does a marvelous job at. Watch this. This is so cool. Okay, well, first of all, let me show you what I'm doing. Let's suppose we take a sine wave and we're looking at it like this. What we can do with this thing is physically measure. I know this is a crude sine wave. Doing the best I can. What we're going to do is we're going to measure it right here. We'll get a peak, and then we'll get 0. And then we'll get another peak, an absolute value. The absolute value of this and this are the same, just different polarity. And then we'll get a 0, and then we'll get another peak. So we're going to measure a peak, a null, a peak, a null, and a peak. And then we'll see the difference between them. Okay, well, let's find a peak over here. There it's peaking. See, all I'm doing, what this thing's got is a little tiny probe that's actually sliding along that slotted line in there. So what I'm going to do is put this thing up at a peak, and it's going to be like right. Sorry for the fumbling, but I want to make it as right as I can. This thing is just really cool. So it starts to go down there, it starts to go up there. Okay, let's check that one. Okay, and if we read this, I hope you can read that. This is in centimeters. That's 10. That's 14. 14.8. So that'd be 148 millimeters. Let's write down 148. Okay. Now remember, we're at a peak. We're going to go to 0, a peak, a 0, and a peak. Peak. Let's go to a 0. So there we are, right there. Now we're measuring this point right here. Then we'll go to another peak. And we're measuring this one. Another 0. And another peak right there. See, they're really close together because you'll see in just a minute. Hope this turns out good, and doing it with one hand doesn't make me cause a lot of error. I think it's about as close as I can get it. And then we look down here at this one. Now we're at exactly 26.9 centimeters, so it'll be 269. 269. Then all we have to do is get out the calculator and subtract 269, 148 minus 121 millimeters. So we just had this nice little device that we measured from here to here, and we got 121 millimeters. Well, the exact wavelength of 2.5 gigahertz is a 3E8 divided by 2.5E9. So there it is. 0.120 meters, 120 millimeters. We measured it at 121 millimeters. Now, I did try to take into consideration the velocity factor, but the velocity factor of air is 1. So I don't think there's a velocity factor correction here. If there is, it's so tiny. But just by this physical measurement from a device made back in the 1940s, which I don't think it was ever intended for 2.5 gigahertz, I was able to accurately measure that frequency and wavelength. Well, I actually measured the wavelength, the nodes on it, you know, the down to 1 millimeter. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, this is a little antenna, and of course I can adjust it up and down. I've been playing with it, and adjusting it up and down, you can see it do all kinds of crazy things. But I don't know how to use it to tune an antenna yet. If you guys know how to do this with a slotted line, you might let me know. Anyway, I won't belabor it. Like I said, it's got a battery inside. It's got that little tube. It's really very simple. But it's, of course, mechanically, this is just such a beautiful piece of equipment that I had to show it. I think all that we can do with this old marvelous equipment made back in those days is just document it, and who knows, somebody will run across it, and like I say, you know, it's quite a nice little Wi-Fi device. Maybe it'll help somebody. Thanks for watching.